free Golden Eagles for War Thunder. Download the app in the description below. Hey guys, welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to a bit of a tutorial on SPAAs in War Thunder Ground Forces Realistic Battle Combined Arms. It's probably happened to you that you've taken your tank out, drove to the middle of the map, and then you either got one shot, you got a little bit of damage or no damage whatsoever, and the only thing you have left to spawn in is a lousy SPAA. Now, SPAs in this game have a bit of a weird vibe to them, and in a lot of cases, the ones that are being played out the most are also the most hated ones. And there's very good reasons for that. Realistic battles implies that first a tank should be spawned in. After the tank is eliminated and has maybe captured something or dealt some damage, the player can then spawn in a bomber, or an attacker, or a fighter if that's the case. And then of course those fighters can get countered by SPAA. But since in realistic forces there are no indications when an enemy actually has a plane up, and we have to just use our eyes or maybe your ears if you have your audio turned up enough, you might hear bombers passing above you. The probability, therefore, of a player using the SPAA for its intended role of shooting down planes is rather slim. So, naturally, the most spammed out vehicles are the ones with armor-piercing or HVAP shells. You're going to see a lot of ZX-257s, you're going to see a lot of Ostwinds, a lot of Kugelblitzes, and whilst I am making this video from a top-tier perspective, pure 8.0 driving out the M163 Vulcan, this is applicable to any battle rating. Usually SPAA are spawned and rushed in to capture the points, they're spawned in and rushed in to play as tank destroyers or light tanks, and very rarely do you actually see players using them against planes. Now, this is not just a player-born problem, this is the way realistic forces in ground battles have been designed. What you could do, this is just a potential fix, maybe just a bit of food for your thought. If planes or a certain percentage of players would be able to spawn in aircraft at the beginning of the match, then SPAs could actually be used, but that would be a problem, because players would most confidently, suicide in and just bomb everything, so players driving heavy tanks, somebody in a mouse for example, would barely get out of their spawn and already they've gotten shot down. So the tactic I'm showing you here is the way I've currently approached going through the spading process of all these vehicles. As most of you have known, if you watched some of the past videos and watched some of my live streams, I've been going through intense grinding, and so having to use these AAAs in action and just trying to shoot down planes, to use that as a main way of spading them is virtually impossible. What I've applied though is a bit of a trick. In realistic battleground forces, again, there's this thing called spawn points. There are no 3 respawns like you have in arcade. You have to actually manufacture damage to create spawn points with which you can then spawn in further vehicles. Now, to make use of this, I found out a little trick, and I learned this when I was flying out the LA-174, the Russian fighter. If you get damage on 2 or more vehicles, you're creating a multiplier of points. This is not for Silver Lions, this is not for RP, this is for producing spawn points. So what I can do here is I can take my Vulcan and I can flank around the side of the map, I can take out other top tier SPAs, and at the same time I can force a bit of spawn points to be reproduced so I can later spawn back in and perhaps even be able to carry this match. As a matter of fact, very shortly I'm going to upload another video which is going to be titled the War Thunder's Longest Matches, where I'm going to take a look at tactics from start to finish on a very similar match to the way this one was played. Now, if you're still wondering what exactly I'm doing here, the idea is this: survive for as long as possible, shoot at as many tanks as possible, do as much hits, not damage itself, but just hits on as many different vehicles as possible. For this, we're actually reproducing spawn points, with which we can then of course spawn back in a bigger tank, a heavy tank perhaps, or a fighter, and have more use. Right there, just a couple of shots into the back of a T-62, it didn't kill him, but it got me a kill assist, and that kill assist is, like it or not, the same, regardless if you have nearly killed the enemy or just hit it with one bullet, and that's a vital thing to know. Kill assists are going to boost your spawns insanely well. And to get some more points in this particular match, and this is something that SPAs do very often, I'm going to cap the circle. Now, the T-10 is going to kill me. It's an inevitability. There's nothing I can do frontally against that tank. Perhaps maybe shoot down the barrel, but I'm not even going to try. But he failed to kill me before I got the spawn. And here's the thing. When you capture a cap point, you get a tremendous amount of points, and all you have to do is just sit there. I managed to get from being on the bottom of the team to being on top of the team simply by getting a kill assist, and capturing a point. All of that with very little effort. And now I can spawn in my Cougar and I can do some damage from air. Now, whilst we're watching me fly around the plane, I wanted to touch on a topic that I haven't actually talked about, and this is the new SPAs. The Shilka, the Vulcan, the Old Falcon, of course, and the Gepard. A lot of people don't like them. Or at least there's obviously going to be this, discussion, why do we need so many SPAs? There's players who like SPA, there's players who can't stand them. I think SPA at this little inner bracket, sort of. And for me to fight a Vulcan and a Shilka, or a Vulcan versus a Gepard, is sort of this like a little niche combat that's happening within the match itself. When you're driving out a weakly armored top tier SPA that has maybe 60, maybe 80, well, they usually mainly have 60mm of penetration maximum with the AP shells, you can't really kill much. Now, there are certain weak spots. I've had situations where I've killed an IS-3 from the front using the Vulcan, and you can do that with pretty much any tank. But in general, you're going to be driving around, trying to sneak like a little ninja, finding those other SPAs that have the same weak spots, that have the same penetration, but obviously are equally vulnerable to shots, and you'll simply start eliminating them. I have a tip for a few of you that might enjoy it, and that is that spawning in SPAs can sometimes result into you literally feeding the enemy team. If you have nearly lost, if your spawn is about to be overrun, there's no point spawning in an SPA because often enough you're just giving the enemy that additional kill, which means an additional assist, which means an additional spawn point, which means the enemy team just has a little bit more power to go back at you. But when you do have the option and you feel like you've failed your team, spawn in that extra SPA. One of the motivations I get is this: I don't like being on the bottom end of the team. I actually really like, and I thrive myself, to be as high on the team result as I possibly can be. Now, there are certain tricks to reproducing points in matches. There are a couple of tricks that I don't really want to give out yet, but we will touch them in a couple of future videos. In general, though, of course, kills, capture points, doing the objectives, that is the main portion. For me, my dream match is a win and a carry, which means that we win the match and we, of course, try to get as good as we possibly can during that match. I don't try to look at how many deaths I have. I don't try to look at how many kills I have even. I try to look for as much cooperation and help that I can give to my team as possible. And really, I started thinking about this when I was playing the Scorpion, because the M56 is a great tank, but it was the only one at tier 4, so I didn't want to just have that in my rooster when I was playing. I updated it. So I was fighting Leos, I would use the AP shell. If I was fighting the Russians, I would use the Heat FS shell. Issue was, there were plenty of matches where I rushed a bit too far, and I got outrun, got killed, and that's me done for the match. I'm on the bottom of the team, I've done no damage, I've spotted nobody, I haven't dropped an arty strike, and, that's me not contributing to my team in any way possible. And so I started trying to apply the AAA as a backup vehicle, and you'd be surprised at just how much good you can do sometimes by just suiciding. Hitting a lot of vehicles at the same time, trying to do a lot of hits, trying to get a lot of assists, spotting for your team, notifying them, flanking around and finding other SPAs who are doing the same thing you're doing. It creates a sub-game within the match itself. It's sort of like a mini-game, like a little quest of your match to take that SPA, which is the only thing you have remaining, and try to make a good comeback on that match. And this is something that I think it's useful for not just people who are like me, who are trying to spade them, and these AAA, by the way, are very hard to spade. There's very little planes to shoot at, there's very little tanks you can actually reliably penetrate and get hills on, and even with the talisman that I have on all of these top tier vehicles, it's still a very, very slow grind. And so if you really want to get through at least the fire extinguisher, the parts and whatnot, this is something you should consider, because you're not just doing beneficial things to your team, but you're also helping out yourself by, of course, getting a little bit of extra RP on the way. And as we're pretty much just finishing off this match, as the points start draining down for the enemy team, really here we've just we've solidified the victory with our team. We've overrun the cap point, and most of the time this is really where the match ends. I wanted to spend a couple of moments just talking about what's been currently happening on the channel with the game and whatnot. Those of you who have watched my update on how many vehicles I've yet to spade, I've been going a quite hammerload on the grind on the British tanks primarily. I'm really waiting anxiously for the Japanese tanks to be released. But in the meantime, I found myself quite overwhelmingly recording matches in bulk, in the sense of sitting down for 3, 4, maybe even 6 hours in certain cases, and just playing War Thunder match after match, not pausing the recording in between, but just going with a bulk recording. The issue behind this is that I haven't had the ability, there's a bit of a problem I have with my sound card. I cannot set up a virtual audio cable, which means that when I record War Thunder, I also record all the sounds that are happening behind. So when I'm listening to music, if I'm watching a live stream in the background, that is all going to be audible. So for that, I have to mute the audio of the video, and so I've now been sort of forced to play a bit of audio for you in the background. I've chosen some very neutral soundtracks. I've made it very silent, so it's not too intrusive, but there is something there to make the viewing experience a bit more leisureful from an audio perspective. So I would really recommend, if you guys do have any suggestions or any feedback on that, to let me know in the comments below. And the reason I say this is because I've gone through so many matches that I played in my free time that I didn't record that ended up being absolute masterpieces. And even though there is a replay function, you know, the replays in War Thunder are still quite weak and very hard to really show good matches from, especially from an entertainment value point perspective. But the main issue is that when you go into a recording session, which literally means sitting down and playing the game for the sake of getting footage out of it, it often ends up in not so much a average match result, because you are subconsciously trying to make a good, reliable video. So from a tactic point of view, which I want to start uploading more often, matches like these are a lot more enjoyable. So to a certain extent, I think you're going to have to live up with the music. I will work with you on that to make sure that the background soundtracks are not too loud, not too silent, and not too intrusive. And of course, to keep the gameplay short, concise, and the information flowing back and forth. With all that said, I think a slight inconsistency with the uploads, and apology would be quite in hand there. But obviously, I've been quite busy with the creation of live streams and whatnot, and working around a couple of side projects. So those will be probably releasing shortly. But for me, the most important part right now is to find a good, reliable way of getting a hold of matches, which I can then edit together into a good educational video. So anyways, that's it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. If you want more examples of how SPAs can be used, if you want more tips and tricks or videos of that regard, do let me know in the comment section below. But until next time, take care and safe tanking.